This is a new bonus episode which will show up in your feed every few months called Charlie's Queer Book Club. Charlie will talk about the best queer books to read in 2024. So if you love to read queer books, this is a place for you. Be sure to catch the bonus episodes every few months right here. And now, on with the show.
There was always a sense that I was different.
And she kind of just reassured me with real life examples that that's not how it was.
It's taken a while to unpack it all because it's a weird thing that have to come out.
I wasn't 100% sure I was lesbian.
And one of my kids fell out and I'm in the bikini set. Families are a great thing, but I have one now with my husband being gay because it was on TV when I was growing up.
Shouting 2468 gay is just as good as straight.
Precious queer youth are taken care of.
I've been mistaken for a man ever since age 20.
And yet back then also you had that freedom to express yourself in these places.
Wait, so like all of these people are LGBTQ?
You're listening to LGBTI Conversations with Anthony Doig. And today on the show for the very first time with Charlie's Queer Book Club. We've got Charlie himself. How are you?
I am well, Anthony. How are you?
I am fantastic. Now, we've got an exciting book we're going to talk about today called Lie With Me.
Yes, we are going to talk about Lie With Me. It's a really, really interesting novel. I read it for the first time around 2 years ago. It's actually a French novel that was published in 2017, and it had a really massive and overwhelming response in France. So it was later translated to English and published in around 2019 here in Australia, if I'm correct. And it's just a really, really interesting novel.
And who's the author of the book?
So Philippe Besson is the author. He's a gay man who grew up in France and he has published heaps and heaps of books over there. But at the moment, we only have Lie With Me and another book called In the Absence of Men. And I think, if I'm correct, there will be another book being translated later on this year. So it is a short novella so it's around 150 pages and it's set in Bordeaux in France in the 1980s. And it follows the story of this man recounting the story of his first love. And it's suspected to be autofiction. And autofiction pretty much just means that the story is believed to be based on the author's own life and somewhat fictionalized from that.
And if we delve into it a little bit more, you're saying that it's believed that it is based on his life. Is there any way of us actually knowing how much of the story is based? Has he come out in the past and said that it has followed his story in life, or is it just something that the audience just assumes that it's loosely based on his life story?
So Philippe has said in interviews that parts of the story have been heavily inspired by his own life. But one of the main giveaways is that he named the narrator Philippe as well. So there's lots of little hints along the way that allude to the fact that it is most likely a large portion of it is inspired by a real event. But to what degree, we don't know, obviously, because authors are very good at telling stories and making up little lies here or there to entertain us.
That's what they're good at, aren't they? Taking us on a journey.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
So what were some of the more interesting parts of the novel without giving too much away? It's a fine line to walk, I know.
Yeah, it is. So I think the novel does speak for itself. So as you said, you don't want to give too much away. But what the story is mainly about, as I said before, it's about this man who is a writer and he is on tour promoting a novel. And he's doing a sort of book signing. This is at the start of the book. It's not really a giveaway. And he sees this boy who has a striking resemblance to the first boy he ever fell in love with. And then the writer sort of takes us on this journey through a letter-esque sort of format. And he takes us on this journey where he talks about this hidden love affair with this gorgeous boy named Thomas, and it's during their last year of high school, so you can just imagine how all-consuming this love affair is. And it also touches on this aspect of disregard that happens a lot during teenage gay relationships and in any relationship, really. But it talks about how we manage to still steal time to meet with these people, and these boys continue in this secret and carry it on, and it ends up being this world-altering love affair, which we slowly get trickle-fed information about, and it's beautiful.
And you were saying there's another 2 books that are being translated. Are they at all a part of this original book, or are they just completely separate stories?
From what I can read, because there's a lot of French in all of this, but I have read his other English translated work, which is called In the Absence of Men, which is completely different. It was published in 2001, and that was the book that sort of launched Philippe Besson into fame in France and allowed him to become a full-time writer, and that is set in World War One, and it has a lot of the same themes in terms of gay relationships and things like that, you know.
Because you read, obviously, a lot of books, more than the average person, do you find with a lot of writers that the themes are very similar throughout the novels they write?
Yeah, I think there is a heavy undertone in gay books, which, for better or for worse, whether this is what we need, they are very sad, a lot of them. That's sort of a universal plot theme for a lot of gay books. There really isn't many happy gay books, and I will warn you, this book isn't very happy. It's very sad. But I think that has a lot to say for history and the nature of gay relationships in the past.
And you were saying it was set in the 1980s too, so there was a lot happening there as well.
Yeah, 100%. And like especially in rural France, when there was a lot of expectations placed on young men in terms of physical labor and expectations surrounding that and what it meant to be a man during that period, I think is really encapsulated in this book. And the book is just so tender and it's passionate and it's extremely erotic, and it's just a beautiful commentary on the passage of time and how some wounds and that they never heal, and how we share some relationships with people that we will never forget about, for better or for worse. And
does Philip still live in France?
Yeah, he does still live in France, and he is a full-time writer, which is not very common these days. So it has a lot to say for how large his impact has been on the literary community, both in LGBTQ communities and otherwise. And I think because this book has been translated to English and so many other languages, impacting a lot more people. The translator, Molly Ringwald, did a really beautiful job of translating the French. I've had a lot of people read this and really enjoy it. I had a friend from Poland who I met through social media who just finished the book yesterday, and he called me absolutely sobbing, and he found the book really touching and impactful.
Wow. How many books do you believe, if you're writing in another language, you're actually able to get translated and offered to the rest of the world? Is that something that happens a lot in literature, in novel writing, or is that pretty rare?
Very hard to do. I've listened to quite a lot of podcasts talking about how difficult it is and how getting your novel translated to even English is a massive feat, and then having it translated to so many other languages, because being a translator isn't that common. It's very hard to become a translator because finding words that translate properly and making the prose read as it's meant to is very difficult. So yeah, it's very difficult.
I'm assuming you'd probably lose a lot of the nuances in the story when you do translate to something like English as well.
Yeah, 100%. Some things can't be properly translated. There will never be a word for them. But I think this book does a really good job of still keeping everything that it was in French. And it's so lyrical and urgent, and it demands to be heard, but it's also so beautiful. You'll be constantly underlining things, and that's one thing I recommend to people, is that they're not afraid to draw on their books. They're not afraid to actually use them, to dog-ear the pages, because I think you'll get a lot out of this book if you do take the time to do that. And then as a little reward, if you have finished the book, there was a movie released last year, which is absolutely phenomenal, and it's definitely one of the best book-to-film adaptations I've seen.
Wow, because that can be quite hard as well, can't it? You read the novel and you see the movie and you think, oh, it was terrible, and vice versa. So for you to say that, it's pretty special.
Yeah, because there's so many times, you see and they lose so much of what the original book was, and I completely understand that, because how is one meant to get, for example, a 600-page book and fit it into an hour and a half? It's just, when you spend 20 hours with a book, to fit that all into an hour and a half is extremely difficult. But Lie With Me, I think, has this special circumstance surrounding it, that it is a very short book, and it says so much in so few words that it translated to the screen really well. And I think the casting of it was perfect. Even if you did watch the movie before you read the book, it would paint this picture of these characters in your head, if that would help. But yeah, everything in the movie, it was actually filmed in the location that the book was written in. It is in French, so you have to read some subtitles, so a little bit of work, but it is definitely worth a watch, either before or after you read the book.
It sounds absolutely fascinating and definitely on my book list for 2024, Lie With Me. Now, Charlie, how many queer stars would you give this book?
Queer stars, I would say this is definitely, I'm a bit biased, this is one of my favourite books, so this is a 5 queer star book for me, 100%.
Wow, thank you so much for coming on LGBTI Conversations with Charlie's Queer Book Club, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Have a good one.
If you love listening to LGBTI Conversations, make sure to follow. This will help other people find us much easier. And also, make sure that you never miss out on an episode. Thanks for listening to LGBTI Conversations with me, Anthony Doik.